Beth, I hear you calling, but I can't come. Ugh. All right, let's shoot this thing. Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. Michael Noland here. Tonight we're going to discuss the rock band Kiss. Are they the kiss of death for rock and roll? Now, in past videos, you've heard me criticize certain bands who continually tour, even though they're down to one or two of their original members. I've also criticized bands that are touring under the band name without a single original member as well. I've criticized truly great artists like Genesis and Paul McCartney. Of course, with Genesis having to practically wheel Phil Collins out on stage with his son playing his instrument. I still to this day imagine this wonderful light show that must have gone on, and there's poor Phil sitting in his chair on stage. And I've also criticized Paul McCartney. Now, Paul McCartney's voice has changed dramatically in the last 5 or 6 years. And although he can still sing many of his songs quite adequately, there are some songs that are just sounding dismal. And of course, I feel that those songs need to be dropped from his set list and add newer songs to that set list, perhaps songs from his last 4 albums or from past albums that he's never performed live, but that he is still vocally capable of delivering. So to the Kiss Army, all I can say is if I'm criticizing this band, they're in very good company. Now for me, Kiss comes from that glam rock genre of rock and roll. Now, if you're not comfortable with the glam rock tag, how about theater rock? Now, I was a teenager when theater rock hit. I was quite aware of the New York Dolls, Mott the Hoople, Slade, as well as David Bowie and Alice Cooper. Now, those first 3 bands that I mentioned were all right. It just seemed to my ears they didn't write anything special. And to tell you the truth, I wasn't really impressed with David Bowie's first sound. I actually liked his first album, which was acoustic, but then when he got into the Ziggy Stardust persona, I was less impressed. Of course, David Bowie, the chameleon, would never be tagged, and it was later through another incarnation of David Bowie that I learned to actually appreciate his Ziggy Stardust incarnation. But you know, out of all those bands that I just mentioned, Alice Cooper was the band that I thought had the most talent. They had the best songs, their lyrics. All I can say is take a look at Alice Cooper, and of course I'm talking about the band Alice Cooper. They had a really melodic approach for a band that explored dark tones, dark riffs. Halo of Flies, anyone? And to tell you the truth, if that band had quit the theatrics and just showed up in Levi's, I would have ran to that concert, no doubt. Well, just when you thought it was safe to go back in the water, Kiss arrived. Now, I have to admit, I was an older teenager when Kiss actually arrived on the scene. And I know that their targeted audience was anyone from, say, 12 to about 15, maybe 16 years old. But you know, at that time, I was still a comic book nerd. A band dressed up as superheroes was surely gonna be a hit with me. But then I saw their made-for-TV movie. You know, when I saw that movie, I knew one thing for sure. Scooby-Doo cartoons were in no danger. Probably due to that movie more than anything, I stayed away from the band Kiss almost like they were a plague. Now, over the decades, I heard tracks that would almost impress me by this band. Basically, I saw them as what I call a downstroke approach to rock. Many of their riffs on the guitar and bass, all downstrokes, with Gene Simmons showing some brilliance at bass at times. But beyond just a handful of their tracks, I was never really impressed with the band that much. To me, they always seemed to be okay musicians, okay singers, and okay songwriters. And I guess that's what bothered me more than anything else as they came out. I was used to bands like Led Zeppelin, Yes, The Beatles, Pink Floyd, Black Sabbath, And along comes Kiss, and you know what? I didn't think they were good enough to even be a valet for one of those other bands' cars. But you know, all of that is just a matter of taste, isn't it? The fact that I don't care for Kiss does not mean that there are those out there that aren't absolute rabid fans. Anyway, that's just my own personal opinion about the band and how I came to know about them and everything. And maybe part of that has to do with why I didn't exactly take to them in the first place. But there is no denying there's a Kiss army out there. And this army don't want to see any fallen heroes. Forget the fact that two of their heroes have already fallen. They are no longer a part of the band. They are no longer on stage. Only 50% of this band is actually performing. Even the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame only recognized their 4 original members. And that's another thing. Do they deserve to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? I think they do. Just because they're not my cup of tea, I fully recognize that they made their place in history in rock. And as I said, they've made some good music. And in my opinion, by the way, when Gene Simmons thought that every member of Kiss should be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I fully agree with him. He even gave him a great example. After all, they inducted everybody that was ever in the Grateful Dead. But with all of that aside, my main concern with Kiss tonight is the fact that they are one of the many bands out there currently touring. And their tour, evidently, has been very successful. They've just added another 100 cities to that never-ending tour, swearing to us that this will be the last time that you'll be able to see them on cruises. Yeah, that would make them a lounge act. And of course, the elephant in the room, have they been caught lip syncing? You know, back in the early 2000s, anybody caught lip syncing would have been crucified. When asked about this, Paul Stanley made some vague reference about protecting his voice. You know, this is something that has always bothered me about certain bands performing live. I hate it when a band has a guitar tech backstage playing the harmony leads to the famous lead guitarist in the band, or the 4 backup singers you don't see off to stage left. Perhaps a keyboardist on the other side of the stage, behind the curtains, supplying you with all of those missing sounds from the record. Now maybe that makes me a purist, I don't know, but when I go see a rock band, I want to see that rock band perform whatever they can and give us something we don't hear on the record. This is why I love Led Zeppelin. When they performed live, you didn't get the same version that you got on the record. As a matter of fact, when they performed live, you didn't get the same version that they performed live the night before. A wonderful and very artistic approach to playing rock and roll live. Now, I'm not against ancillary players, but bring them on stage. Show us why they're there. For example, I criticized Paul McCartney for playing Eleanor Rigby and then having his damned keyboardist play all the string arrangements on his keyboard. It sounds fake as hell and I hate it. But if Paul brought out a live octet and put them center stage, I would be in love with that song all over again. He's hired horn players in the past. I don't see why he has never done that. But anyway, I digress. This video's not about McCartney. You know, with Kiss, it's not so much that they're bad musicians, it's the whole package. You feel like you're going to the circus. Only these days, the lions are kind of old. The magician hasn't updated his tricks in a decade. And as far as any high wire acts, forget it. When we go to the circus, we know that the elephants there aren't as cool as the elephants at the city zoo. And if you want to see real magic tricks, go to Vegas. And you know what? Speaking of Vegas, I half expect this band to show up in Vegas doing a lounge act. You watch it, it's gonna happen. But you know, there's something else this reminds me of. This reminds me of an Irish wake. Only dear old Paddy McGill has gotten up out of the coffin, took a swig of good Irish whiskey, and started dancing with the youngest maiden in the cabin. My God, sometimes it seems like we're down to parading walking corpses rather than coming up with or accepting a brand new act with something fresh to say. But for these bands, and especially Kiss, we are willing to have them cake on that makeup, hobble out on their subatomic platform shoes, and just hope to God that the Geritol worked. And you know what? People are lining up for these shows. Now, I took a look at one of their California shows. To get a really good seat, you're talking $500 plus. Some of those seats going for as high as $1,600. You know, the way rock and roll is now, the only way that I would be willing to pay $1,600 for any concert is if some fool invented a time machine and sold me a ticket to go back in time and see Led Zeppelin or the Beatles live. $1,600. The devolution of rock and roll right in front of our eyes. Hell, I practically expect this band to open up a resort. You can go to Kissland, ride Kiss rides, play Kiss games, have a Kiss picnic. Hey, how about Kiss My Ass? Nah, this is everything that's wrong with rock and roll as far as I'm concerned. Endless tours, corporate sponsorship, increasing ticket prices, no new music, and aging rock stars who are beginning to not be able to sing or have to be carted out on stage. Shame on us. You know, I think the average rock fan is almost like a stunned witness to a horrible car crash. You just can't avert your eyes. Somehow you feel drawn in, almost like you must participate in this horrendous thing that happened to somebody else. All right, so that's my rant for tonight, guys. You know what? Rock and roll is in disrepair, to say the least. I've likened the whole art form of rock and roll as a living entity as being a patient on life support. And you know what? I don't think I'm too far off. We practically need life support to get these old goons up on stage anyway. I say, in most cases at least, out with the old, in with the new. And you know what? We're going to be talking exactly that on Royce in the House on his next episode. I'll be there Sunday as a guest panelist, and we've agreed to talk about what new bands and up-and-coming bands can do to make a living if they don't get the big record deal. You know, there are guerrilla tactics that bands have been using for at least 3 decades to actually make a living when they can't get a record company to even listen to their demos. And we'll be discussing the many ways that not just bands, but artists in general, how they can generate not only just a living, but also be the masters of their own ship. All right, so that about does it for tonight's video. You know, am I wrong on this? Have I missed the boat with Kiss? I really want to hear from you. And if you're from the Kiss Army, just be respectful. Educate me. Am I missing something with this band? The names that you're seeing, of course, are brand new subscribers. I always give a shout out at the end of my videos. Welcome to the tribe, guys. If you enjoyed tonight's video, consider giving us a thumbs up. And of course, feel free to share my videos anytime. I always appreciate it. All right, so that about does it for tonight. I'm Michael Nolan. This, of course, is The Bottom Line, and I'll see you in my next video.